G'day, Paul here from Rotec Aerosport. A good friend of ours has got an aircraft here with all the Rotec equipment on it for the Jabiru, and I thought I'd go through it. We've offered him some assistance. He's purchased the kits from us, and we've offered him some assistance in getting it on his aircraft. This is an experimental Jabiru, home built, and so what he's got here is so basically what we've built here is a header tank, which is about a 3.5 inch aluminium tube with ends welded on it. And as you can see, that hose there on this on the passenger side routes around here and picks up the hot water that would be coming out of this rail here on that side, and it goes into the header tank. And I've got a radiator cap mounted on the top here. And then on the other side, we've got the hot water out from these cylinder heads, again going to the other side of the header tank, fabricated header tank. So that's the hot water coming in, and then underneath the header tank you'll see there's a 19 or a 3/4 inch hose there, just there, and that's just right there. And if we go around the other side, you can see that that is feeding water, the hot water down to the radiator, which follows that hose down there, and then we've got a step here because of the radiator. This is the motorcycle radiator, TIG welded radiator we use, and that actually mounts in the cowl. It just hangs there when the cowl's not on. We've got these flanges that we've made to fit the cowl. I'll show you that in a minute. So then the water goes in there, goes out the other side of the radiator, and then up to the Davies Craig water pump, and then the water pump feeds that common rail under there. See it there, it's got the 6 pipes on it, and they feed under the heads each side, 3 on this side and 3 on the other side, feeding the cold water in. And that's basically the water circulation system. So that's it. I've got the pump. The pump has been wired into the main master bus, so that as soon as the engine is, the master is on, the pump comes on. So it's automatic. There's no control over the pump. It's on all the time when the master's on. We found from experience that some customers had installed the pump with a switch on it, and they would invariably forget to put the switch on. And the reason we can afford to have the pump running when the master's on is because, unlike other Jabirus that have some trouble starting on their traditional Jabiru magnetos, which need every ounce of current to get the cranking speed. Again, I'm not saying every Jabiru. There seems to be a certain breed of Jabiru engine with, I guess it's depending on what coils they fitted. Some coils are better than others. I'm not sure what the story is, but a lot of Jabirus, they do have trouble starting, particularly when the battery's a bit down or it's cold. All right, so what we've got here is we've got Rotec ignition, which has got a hall sensor there, which picks up the magnets on the flywheel, and then feeds and then triggers a high energy coil there, and that coil lead feeds into this distributor cap on the pilot side. Can't see it there, it's all tucked in around the back there. And so if we go into the cabin, you'll see on the switches, you see on the switches there, we've got an E-ignition and a mag. So E-ignition's on the left and the mag's on the right. While we're here, we've got the master switch, the throttle, obviously the throttle, standard throttle, and now we've got a mixture control, vernier, classic vernier type mixture control. I'm holding a light here, so I can't use I haven't got 3 hands. And on this side, we've got where the choke used to be, I've changed the cable. Where the choke used to be, the cable's been changed, and there's now a mixture, a primer cable there. So you would pull on that knob there to engage the TBI and prime it, and then you push it away. So you pull for prime, but you must remember to push it away, otherwise the primer will stay on. It won't run well, it'll flood actually. Right, so that's that. And couldn't quite, it's difficult to see the TBI, but it is in there. It was done first before all the LCH and the alternator kit. You can see the alternator kit there, fits beautifully. 45 amp alternator kit, 2.5 to 1 pulley on the back, so you get good charging even at idle, and it fits perfectly, as you can see. It's a nice package, very nice package. Can't really see the TBI, but it is down there. You can just sort of see between the caps there. And you can see there's the TBI there. There's the control cable for the throttle, and then there's the mixture cable there, which rotates that mixture arm. You can see there's a fiberglass adapter on the square entrance of the TBI, and that's got a short bit of scat hose feeding to the original Jabiru airbox with the air filter in there. You can see there's a bracket for the mixture cable. There's the mixture arm just beyond that hose there. Bit hard to see. Maybe I can come underneath there. Not really. Now there's a good shot of the common rail, which feeds the. This is the common rail here. That feeds the water to the 6 ports on the heads. So there you go. And the cowl. Cowl's pretty nice, but hasn't really been modified. The original scoop here was for the oil cooler, and you can see we've got these 2 blisters on the sides now. Well, those blisters clear the radiator, which sits in that little pocket there, that little plenum. So yeah, the radiator sits in there, and it's got a curved back on it. Little plenum's been made, all that white area there basically. And so the radiator sits in there. It's bolted in these corners with some captive nuts. It's quite easy to install. And so when you want to remove the cowl, you just undo those 4 bolts, and you just let the radiator hang down on its hoses, no problem. For when you want to change the oil or do any servicing, I guess. And then we've added a port. And here's an extra port that's been added, and that feeds air to the relocated oil cooler, which once used to be there. So that scoop there now is actually doing all the water, is cooling the radiator for the cooling system, coolant. And this port here now feeds a scat hose here, which is feeding the oil cooler, an oil cooler shroud, and of course the oil cooler is behind there. So the oil cooler's been mounted sort of long ways, bolted to the frame using Adel clamps, and just a simple fiberglass shroud was fabricated, and that's what the air comes in to cool the oil cooler. Neat little package. So I'll stop the video here and show you what it looks like with the shrouds on, which have been retained. So I've only got one hand free here, but these shrouds will fit straight over the top of all that. So you'll still get the nice air cooling over the cylinders and even over the heads and bits and pieces. Keep the engine just a bit of extra, isn't it? It doesn't hurt to keep it on there. So yeah, still retain the shrouds, and notice these reinforcement little 1.5mm plates of aluminium to reinforce where the fiberglass always flogs out on these shrouds. So you can see they've just been riveted on there, and makes that nice and strong, and that just picks up those 3 rocker cover screws there. So still retain those cooling ducts. Why not? Why waste them? So put them back on. They fit straight over the Rotec heads with very little modification. In fact, the only mods we've made is will fit straight back on without any real modifications. The only modifications that would be required would be to feed the I can't know if you see, that's a bit dark, but yeah, the water return line so you might need to just trim out an extra hole there, give some clearance on the fiberglass, and just put these little rubber baffles on there to block them off. And same on the other side here, the baffle, same deal, beefed up those broken holes where they flog out, always flog out, perish, burn. You can see they're burnt. But yeah, you rivet those plates on there and it ties it all in nicely. It'll last forever. Anyway, thought you'd be interested in that. That is pretty much a 3300 Jabiru with a 3300 with the works. So the liquid cooling, the 45 amp alternator conversion, and the Rotec ignition for the easy start, and the TBI 40S throttle body with mixture control. So the ignition comes with a module. You can see it mounted on that piece of right angle 90-degree plate, and a relay has been used here, 30 amp relay, so that the switches on the dash aren't under any load. So the mag switches for the ignition is switching this 30 amp relay, which is powering supplying the power for the module and of course the coil, and that works quite well. This relay up here is a 70 amp relay, and that's an intermediate master relay, and that's connecting the alternator to the main bus, and also what else is it doing? It's connecting the alternator to the main bus. Oh yes, and supplying the current to the water pump, which is coming on as soon as you turn the main master on. This engine's also got a lot of monitoring going on here. We've got a CHT probe on every cylinder, and likewise an EGT probe on every cylinder. Same on this side too. CHT, CHT, CHT there, and EGT on every exhaust pipe under there. To be frank, it's a bit overkill. I personally wouldn't bother with all that, because once you've got the water cooling bled and working properly, you really don't have any issues with CHT. Probably just monitor the water temperature like a Rotec 912 would. So the way that's done is on the common rail that we supply with the kit. You might be just able to see it there, right in the middle there. What have you got? You've got the 1, 2, 3, and then just after the third one, you see there's a little bit of brass there. Just see it there. See that silver nut on that brass thing? Well, that's a tapped 1/8 NPT water temperature sender, and that sits right in the middle of that common rail between the two banks. I'll be able to get a better view of it. It's a bit hard to see it, but it is in there. Anyway, so yeah, we basically tap this. So you can see the water pump's actually mounted directly to the end of the common rail there. And it's supported, actually it's just supported on the common rail. It's not mounted any other way. It's perfectly strong enough. The common rail is attached to the aircraft with a large idle clamp around the common rail, and then another idle clamp to the lower frame. Same on the other side. So quick with that. There you go. Oh, actually, you can see the temperature sender there, right in the middle. So focus on that. There it is. There you go. And then you've got your 3 ports on this side. You can see how it's been mounted. Just an idle clamp there, onto another idle clamp around the engine mount, lower engine mount tube. Too easy. See the water pipes under here going in between the pushrod tubes. There's an O-ring where that steel fitting inserts into the head. Good setup. Very good setup. Anyway, we did have noticed there was an oil leak, so we upgraded this T-fitting here. These Jabiru T fittings here, they tend to fall apart over time. And we actually had one on a Rotec radial. We used them on our mini sump, so fitted that on okay. Not the perfect fit, but it's good enough. That's going to be the oil cooler vent or blast hole scoop, and that's been glassed on there, and that'll connect to that scat hose I just showed you before. And this, as I said previously, this is now the radiator plenum feed, and it seems to be working well. A good indicator, there's the plenum box there that the radiator sits in. A good indication is when you're testing the aircraft on the ground for cooling, and you don't get any, and you can run cool on the ground, you're looking in good shape when you get in the air. If you're overheating on the ground, it's not a good start. You need more air to the radiator. But I've done quite a few of these, and I know from experience that this is cooling okay, so I don't expect any issues once it gets in the air, because I'm not having any issues on the ground. Maximum I'm seeing on the ground is about 80, 85, which is about right. So what I did was, because I did some these blisters here, clear the corners of the radiator, added these blisters here because I had the radiator. They look quite neat because the radiator protruded through the, you can just see inside there. Radiator protruded there and there. Corners, so I cut out the corners, let the radiator sit out, and then just put blisters on them. Heads that have come in from a customer, they're off a Jabiru 3300. They appear to be the thin finned heads, and the aircraft TAC says it's got about 160 hours or so on these heads. Now we've taken these heads apart, pulled all the valves out, and set them up into the LCH heads, which have been installed on the aircraft now, and very successfully, very happy with that. But what I thought I'd mention here is that the customer wanted these heads back, and that's fair enough, they have some value. But I thought I'd just go through some of the things that we found. Now keep in mind, these heads have done about 161 hours, somewhere around that. And the customer believe they're in good condition, and they look at first glance that they are in pretty good condition. But let's have a look. This one here, number 2, has got the typical exhaust gas leak here coming between the cylinder and where the cylinder head meets with the cylinder, causes a seal there. That's where a traditional head gasket would be, but there's no head gaskets on a Jabiru. So you can see there's exhaust gas leaking here, which is very typical. And you've got a fairly significant lip there. I don't know if this video will show it, but yeah, you can feel it there, see? It's catching there. But down here, it's not really catching. Yeah, nothing basically there at all. See? But here, significant lip. So the head is sinking in. The barrel is sinking into the head in this area. That should be dead flush. There should be no step there whatsoever. But the top of the barrel is actually sinking in there. And they're all exhibiting that. This one here, this one here, this one here. This one here is quite deep. This one here, and this one here. And we've got some gas leaking on this one here too, here, right here. See the gas leaking? Now what typically happens on these air-cooled Jabiru heads, and there's a lot of people out there that will pass criticism, oh no, I've done plenty of these heads, and I see this repeatedly, that you'll get gas leaks in this area here. You'll get chronic stepping from the softness, and that's why you're having to retorque your heads all the time. And this is not a criticism on the Jabiru engine. It's a really good engine. We've done lots of air conversions on it, but we do see a lot of cooling problems with the cylinders, cylinder heads. And so, you know, you've got to take into consideration that we didn't develop the liquid-cooled heads on a whim. You know, we were very conscious about the effort and there's a lot of effort goes involved in designing and manufacturing those heads, and we certainly didn't do it on a whim. So talking with customers and with our own evidence, we see this a lot. And now our liquid cooled heads will never do this. They just don't yield or soften or distort like this. We've seen distortion on some of these air-cooled heads where the distortion is so great that when you sight down those fins, you can actually see a significant wave where the head is actually distorting, and it's actually changed shape. And you can see it. These fins are obviously supposed to be parallel. When you run a straight edge against them, you can see a considerable woof. Now, I don't know if these heads are doing it or not yet, but because they're not as bad as I've seen, but I've seen some that are chronic. So yeah, that's traditionally what you will see. This is very typical. I've seen a lot worse than that, but that is the area where you'll get the gas leaks. And as I said, we didn't design and put into production the LCH heads on a whim. We put them into production because we knew there'd be a market for them and solve this problem, which we strongly believe, and the evidence supports that it has solved the cooling problem. I mean, when you've got water running through a water jacket in a head, it's cooling at about 30 times the efficiency of any air-cooled head. So our heads would typically run at about 85 degree Celsius on the water, and that's what you would expect on the coolant. Anyway, I just thought I'd mention that. Now, as I said, this customer is expecting to resell these. He's probably expecting them to be in better condition than this, but they're just not. It is what it is. So if you're really going to use these heads again, you'd want to get that head onto a milling machine, and you'd want to mill that back flush again, and get rid of that step. The other thing that can happen on heads, any head, but particularly the Jabiru heads, is when the distortion and the continuous retorquing happens. What ends up happening is the valve seats and the valves lose concentricity, and you start getting the valve not seating when the valve seat properly, and that can cause burning on the edges of the valve, and in some instances a valve failure. So that's another problem we've seen. And of course, excessive head temperatures will often see these valve seats literally fall out. So that's another problem with excessive head temperature, along with detonation. I mean, the quickest way to get an engine to detonate is to get the heads hot. And I used to know that from my old VW Beetle days. You know, you get that on in an Australian summer on a hot day, you'd be pushing your Beetle up hill in fourth gear, and she'd start detonating and pinging like crazy. And that was generally when it got hot. When it was cool, when the heads were cool, when it was first started, you could get away with that. You wouldn't have the pinging. But as soon as it gets hot, the detonation and the pinging starts. Well, it's the same thing here. One of the problems with an aircraft engine, of course, is that you can't actually hear the detonation. At least in a car, you can hear the knock and you can back off. In an aircraft engine, they're so noisy with the propeller noise and all the air noise, and they've just got open, relatively loud exhaust systems. You get a headset on, you can't hear the pinging. There's just no way. And so you don't know to back off, and you can do a lot of damage. But anyway, I just thought I'd mention that. So, you know, we've got this lip here. They really need to be machined if they're going to be reused. I wouldn't buy them. But anyway. The other question we get asked a lot is the weight difference. Well, let's have a quick look at that. So reset this. Set of scales. Now these two heads, they're second hand. This one, I don't know what's the story with this, but it's an LCH head with valve guides and seats. And here's a second hand Jabiru head out of that batch. It's got valve guides and seats with nothing else. So they're exactly the same as far as their fit out's concerned. So let's start with the Jabiru head and see what it weighs. Looks like that's 1.862 kilograms. You can see it's the Jabiru head. 1.862 kilograms. Now let's put the liquid cooled head on there. And 1.71 kilograms. Multiply that by 6. Yeah, that's a nice saving. Now, admittedly, once you put your water, your 3 or 4 litres of coolant into the system, a radiator and some plumbing, you're gonna obviously lose that advantage, and it's gonna be soon soaked up in those items. But the penalty between running a set of our liquid cooled heads, which is that one, and the Jabiru head is really not that great. Maybe a few pounds. possibly even less if you're thrifty with your installation. So yeah, there's really nothing in it. You can physically see the head is exactly the same as a Jabiru. Everything fits in exactly the same spot. The only difference is we have a water jacket in here. There's a water jacket in that little area there, you can see. And we have Welsh plugs on the sides blocking off the galleries, or the water jacket. The spark plugs are in exactly the same position. The valves and everything, all the rocket cover, everything's in the same position. So yes, no difference. So the head is slightly lighter, but as I said, by the time you put all your bits and pieces on that go with the liquid cooled kit, you're going to lose that advantage, and it's going to work out possibly a few pounds penalty, but not really enough to be of any major concern. Anyway, there's your weights. Okay, take it easy. Bye.